Hey, what up, church fam? We're back today, and today we're going to discuss things that will help us grow as men and, more importantly, help us grow as dads. Before we get started, I just wanted to put this out there. We're not by any means or any way trying to degrade our dads or to make them feel bad in any way. We both love our dads, and we honor them, and we're thankful for them. Through this conversation we're going to have today, it's about dads and how they raised us and things, key ideas, and key way of life that we're going to get from this conversation today that will help all of us to grow. So with that being said, we're here with Gavin. So before we get started, just give our audience a little bit of who you are, how you grew up, what kind of home you grew up in, and we'll go from there, man.
Redo that. I burped.
Okay. All right. So I'm here with Gavin, the burpster. Sorry. All right, church fam, I'm here with Gavin, and we're going to discuss our dads. We're going to learn from our dads. We're going to dig deep on some questions that you, our audience, can learn from us. So without further ado, Gavin, how was your day, man?
Doing good.
Yeah, everything going okay?
Yeah.
How's the business?
Starting to really grow and pick up. You can always find us online, Peeler Marketing and Production. We got some exciting videos planned for the future, including with this podcast. So yep. I'm excited to see where it's going to go.
Me too, man. So give us a little background of how you grew up. Did you grow up in a broken home, good home? Just so we can get a grasp of a little bit about you.
Yeah. I grew up in a complete home. I had both of my parents under the same roof. And my dad was the provider. My mom took care of us at the house, took care of the kids. So I'd say it's a very traditional home. That being said, there were some challenges. I think there's challenges in everybody's home. There were some good moments. There were some challenging moments. I've grown and matured to be able to look back on the challenging ones and be grateful for it and, kind of see how I might do things differently if possible. Or, maybe I'll have some questions for you since, my experience of being a father is not there to ask you some of your opinions as well.
Cool. So let's kick things off with, give me a good definition of a dad to you. So watch, before we start, the questions that I'm going to ask you, I want them to be focused towards your dad, if that makes sense. So it'd be like you're asking him the questions or you're answering through your eyes, looking on how he raised you. Does that make sense? So to you, what's the definition of a good dad?
I think to me, the definition of a good dad is what we see in the Bible. And so I would say the best father is God. And I think that we see God's love is so complete for us. So much so that he sent his own son to die for us. That's how much he loved us. And there's so much love to that to be focused on. I think also, though, a good dad is also like God. There is righteousness to it. It's not just letting you do what you want. We see countless times in the scriptures, we see in the Old Testament, especially where Israel was disobedient to God. And time again, their hearts were just wrong. And we do see that God gave them up to their desires and he gave them up to captivity in his form of righteousness and his perfect plan. They no longer could carry out that righteousness. They were against every moral that he had given them, every commandment, every law. So I think that a good dad is someone who is righteous, who is just, who is loving, and we see that through God, and I think that's the best example.
So growing up, for any of us, right, we understand that none of our dads were perfect like God is
right
in our relationship. So how should a dad treat their kids?
I think
it don't have to be like a big list, but just a few things you want to hone in on.
I think it goes back to what I said about with God. I think treating them with love, treating them with righteousness and correction when necessary. So I think those are the main things to focus on from my point of view.
So, what would be a good definition of love, a father and a son love?
Um, I would say there's a different kind of bond between a father and a son than there is with a son and a mom or a father and a daughter. Um, that's who's really teaching you to become a man and teaching you what it looks like to be a man, what it looks like to be a dad. That's who you look to as a son because that's your role model at the end of the day is your dad.
Yeah.
And so I
Even
think
without you knowing, subconsciously, we
you're
look
always
to our
looking to your
parents.
dad.
Yeah,
And I
that's
think
true,
you
man.
think, as a kid, I think you always think you're going to be like your dad. Whenever you grow up as a son, you look towards your dad. And especially when you're really little, you think that's just how men are
Yeah.
when they're grown up. You know, so you're always looking for someone to fill that role. So I would say with the love that a son has for a father and a father for a son, it's keeping in mind that they are always looking towards you.
I see. Do you think a relationship between a mom and a dad and their kids are different?
What do you mean?
Like, in a sense, so the relationship you have with your dad, would you say it's different from the relationship you have with your mom?
I would say yes, for sure. At least in my experience, I'm a lot closer to my mom than I am to my dad. I have like I have an emotional connection with my mom, and my dad, that emotional connection isn't really there.
Did you know? So, this is a lesson for all of us. Men don't emotionally connect as easy as ladies do, right?
Right.
So, when a kid is being born, the first time mom lays eyes on the kid or feeds the kid, breastfeeds the kid, or any of these things, they emotionally get a bond. The same chemical that releases in a lady when they have sex with a man is the same chemical that releases for a child and a mom to bond together.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, in a sense, we're always emotionally connected to our moms until, and moms, I don't mean any offense by this, until they find a wife, and then that emotional connection should be toward the wife instead of the mom.
Right.
There's been tons, and I'm just talking to you because you're young, you don't have a wife yet, and it's something to look out for as you date ladies and bring them home to talk to mom. Moms, and again, I'm not saying this to degrade anybody, but moms kind of get offended by that because you're no longer their little boy.
Right.
That emotional connection goes towards the lady, and a lot of times it causes a lot of friction in marriages. And all that to say, those relationships with our mom are super important, but moms, you have to keep in mind that someday your baby boys are going to go to another lady and be emotionally connected with her, and that's how God meant for it to be.
Right.
So when we see walking on earth as long as I've had, I've had friends, and I've experienced this myself, where in-laws will over-push boundaries, and it's because that emotional connection wasn't with the spouse, it was with the parents. It could be even the daughters. Sometimes the daughters will look to the dads like their husbands. Instead of asking their husbands for stuff, they'll ask their dads. And it's so I'm not trying to tear anybody apart. It's just knowledge going forward to keep in mind as you build your relationships with the young lady and you start your own family. Just be looking out for that, because early in mine and Tracy's days, I've had to step away from family members because of that reason.
Yeah.
It was hard to break that off, but I had to break it clean. And then now I have some of the best relationships now with my sister, my mom, and those who we had to separate from.
Yeah.
Okay, so what should good dads do for their kids?
I think dads for their kids should really show them how things work, really teach them how to fix things, how to work on things. As a man grows up, men are more so providers. And so there's always people looking towards men to do things for them. And whether that be work, whether that be at the house. So I think one of the most important roles of a father is to show your son, especially, how to take care of things. And I would say, too, it's important for your daughters as well now, since, things are a little bit more broken in the world. And, even if things aren't broken, you never know when a woman might end up alone because their husband dies or a widow or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's important for all of us to learn how to do things. And I think the dad is really the one to teach you and set that tone of how to do things. And then beyond just like the provider aspect in the home and maintaining a home, just things to bond with your kid with. You're the one who will teach them how to play sports. You're the one who will teach them how to, run around in the mud, things like that.
Yeah.
I think that's what a dad really should be doing for their son is, providing for them, providing for their family, working for their family, but also taking the time to show them, especially as they're getting older, how to take care of things themselves.
That was one of the hardest things I had to learn as a dad, is to take the time to show my son, hey, this is how you hold a drill.
Mm-hmm.
Being a dad and being older, it's easy for me to overlook that.
Yeah.
And in those moments, man, I've really had some fallouts with my sons, because it's like, in my mind, they should know this,
yes,
but they really don't.
Yeah.
And I had to learn to step back for a minute, take a deep breath, and begin thinking from their eyes. Like, I have to think, they really don't know how to do this. They really don't know how to pick up a wrench. They don't know how to turn the wrench. They don't know which way to turn to untighten stuff. And us dads, we have to be more patient with our sons and daughters, and try not to lose your temper or get all offended right away, because they really don't know.
Yeah.
And it's not, I'm not knocking young people down. I'm not knocking dads down. I'm trying to show dads where I fell short raising my sons. Mm-hmm. I should have took a little more time to be patient and teach them how to change tires, and not just assume that they know everything.
Yeah.
Or the worst thing we do is say, hey, you're an idiot because you don't know this, or don't be stupid. And that brings us into our next question. So how should your dad talk to you, or how should a dad talk to a son?
I think it's important to build your kids up, especially from a young age, because there's already so many things in the world trying to tear them down.
Yeah.
Whenever you come home, I think that's where it really needs to be the attention of building you up. But there does have to be a balance that you build your kids up, you build yourself up, but not to the point where you're never wrong.
Yeah.
Because we're all wrong about something. Most of the time we're wrong about most things. Parent including, children including.
Yeah.
Husband, wife, worker, whatever you are, you're probably wrong about something. And so I think it's important for a dad to build up their son, to talk to him, but that
encourage him when he needs it.
Yeah, put that confidence in him, but still bring in that correction as well.
Yeah.
So if they are doing something wrong, they don't think they're just right about everything.
Yeah.
I've had I've ran into some people who think they're right about everything, and it's really hard to get along with those people because they don't accept correction. They think that they're above it. They think they know everything. And so it's important to have that balance. And how you have that balance, I'm not sure.
So let's say, I'm not saying you're not humble, but let's put it in that standpoint. You come to your dad real humble. What can a dad do to become more approachable in those moments when you're really looking to find the answer to something? I'm not saying you're up there, no, this is how it's done, Dad, but you're, hey, Dad, how do you do this? How should a dad
be approachable?
Yeah, what can he do to be more approachable for moments like that?
To be approachable, I think you have to be like that all the time. You really do need to focus on being friendly and inviting, because if you come home from work screaming in anger and taking it out on all of your kids are never going to want to go to you for anything.
Gotcha.
And if something breaks and you need dad to fix it, and he comes with an attitude about it, and he's not patient with you, he's blaming you for usual wear and tear, you're not going to want to talk to him about that. So then it kind of leaves the kids to figure things out on their own. Unfortunately, that was my experience more often than not, was just not having that approachability. Yeah. So I think it's about, we all have bad days, and I'm not saying you don't have a bad day here and there, but I think most of the time trying to be consistent. And I do think like the only way that you could be that way is if you're really, striving to know Jesus more, because he'll be able to change your heart. Gotcha. And it does require a heart change, because if you go out into the world, you just drive for 15 minutes, someone's going to piss you off. Yeah. So there's always something there that's going to make you angry or upset. And I think that's where we really have to rely on Jesus to take that from us, so that we're not pushing that onto our kids.
Is it safe to say that a dad should probably build up those moments by talking a little more, learning to communicate a little more to his children than just when they need something?
Yeah, probably.
Like, it's safe to just go up to your kids and ask them questions nicely.
Yeah,
and show them how to ask questions, right?
It builds that kind of relationship.
I gotcha. By getting to know them instead of just...
And I'm not sure how that would look, since I don't, have that experience with having kids.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to see how that works. And I think as your kids grow older, things change. I think, too, we do a disservice by thinking that kids are dumber than they really are. I feel like I've seen some things of people on podcasts or people who they're quite intelligent, and I think it starts from a young age of their parents treating them like they're intelligent, not dumbing things down for them.
Yeah.
And I kind of think
talking to them like the normal instead of the goo goo gagas.
And I think we're in a place with our society where everybody's just giving out an iPad and just leaving kids completely monitored. I think of some people, like I've listened to a podcast. There's two people who come to mind. Like there was one podcast with Brett Cooper talking about her upbringing. And then there was another one with, I believe her name is Kira Koslin. And Kira Koslin is an actress. And then Brett Cooper is, she's like a media personality. But both of these young women, they're in their 20s now. Just hearing about the way they grew up and just hearing them talk, there's such an intelligence to them. And the way they talk about it is when they were kids, even from a very age of, 3 years old, 2, 3, 4 years old, their parents were sitting down and teaching them things and talking to them about things. They were doing like flashcards with their kids. They weren't treating them like they were stupid. They were really pouring into them. Yeah. And I think that makes a huge difference in how you talk to your kids, like not talking down on them, but like kind of getting them to that equal playing field.
Yeah.
And then as they get older and they mature more, they have that intelligence with them as well. Because I think I really think we don't give kids enough credit. I feel like if they had enough focus and if they had enough time and investment, they could be...
Or if they really knew their worth, if the parents, especially the dads, talk to their kids like they were worth something, like, hey, you're worth everything. Mm-hmm. Instead of maybe going just to your kids to correct them.
Right.
Or I'm going to tell dad that you were bad today. Mm-hmm. And then dad just comes in and begins yelling, and that's the only conversation you ever have with your dad.
Right.
That kind of kills it. And
yeah.
Growing up in my age group, that's how it was. It was do what I tell you and that's it.
Right.
And I pushed that onto my kids, and I wish I could have that time back to explain to them why we don't do things. Not just because I said, but hey, if you do this, these are the consequences. And here's why you get consequences. Instead of just, hey, don't do that. Why, Dad? Because I said.
Do you think that would help kids as they grow older and they have relationships with different people, like bosses, teachers, or even a boyfriend or girlfriend? Do you think that would help them see if that person is treating them wrong?
Yeah, I think it'll help them see there, and it'll also teach you to ask more questions. The more questions you have, the more clarification you have.
Yeah.
And then the more clarification you have, the easier things become, and you realize that not everyone's out to get you.
Right.
But if we're not approachable as dads, especially at home, or we're not teaching our kids these things, they never learn them.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a terrible communicator, dude. It takes everything in me to learn how to talk to people, and more importantly, how to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my mind, I could be thinking one thing while you're explaining it, and I don't have clarification, but I think you're talking that, and I'm like, okay, I know what he means. And then I'll go do it, and you'll come back and it's like, what are you doing, Phil? It's like, well, I thought this is what you meant. Instead of being like, okay, so blah, 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 right? And then you repeat it back to me, and it's like, okay, I get it. Or you just keep repeating the question until you understand it your way. I feel like especially my generation, we've pushed onto our kids that issue where they don't know how to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like what's happening, but they don't have a good explanation on why that's happening or how to ask proper questions till they understand. Just being how I was, like, hey, because I said, that kind of turns you off to even talk to anybody. What's the point?
Yeah.
You're not going to give me an answer. Then I might as well not say nothing.
Right.
And just walk away unclarified and not understand anything.
Yeah.
And then it makes me feel real disconnected in our relationship because I don't know you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm too scared to ask you anything because last time I asked you, you yelled at me.
Yeah, I had a boss like that once who was very aggressive and didn't like to communicate or teach people.
Yeah.
And it kind of leaves you out on an island to figure everything out yourself. And then the way that you're doing it, your boss comes back in and, well, why are you doing it like that? Well, you've never showed me how to do this.
I know.
And it's hell to work in that kind of environment. And I think it does come from people like that who, it goes beyond your dad. I think that having a relationship with your dad or how your relationship how your relationship is with your dad will affect how you get along with other people, especially other men who remind you of your dad.
I gotcha.
And, that boss that I had, he reminded me a lot of my dad. And that was a time that me and my dad did not have a great relationship. And then I had a terrible relationship with my boss. So it was just hard because you're just fed up with that kind of attitude all the time.
Yeah, I bet.
And then you're walking around pissed off and on eggshells and just miserable all the time too.
I see. So what can a dad do to make you more successful?
I think it goes back to what I said earlier about showing you how to do things.
Gotcha.
And like we talked about also with investing the time into your kids when they're young to teach them things so that whenever they do get older and they start being around their peers, they're able to have the discretion to make their choices better. Like they are able to, we're all going to make dumb decisions, especially as teenagers. But then I feel like sometimes if you get shown by your parents and explained to by your parents about why this was a bad idea, and then you go figure it out, you're like, oh yeah, now that makes sense. I think there's a time in everybody's life where they get told something by their parents and they just have to figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
And there's things that you do have to figure out yourself because I think there's also times where culture and times change. My parents raised me to be successful in the world like they knew it, and it's not the world that exists now.
I see.
And so for me to be successful, what I'm going to have to do and what I do looks different than what they would have done. Not that what they did was wrong because it led them a very successful and good life.
Yeah.
But, just passing on that knowledge because there's things from each generation that should stick. And I think, the parents showing you how to do things to fix your home, how to be wise with your money. My parents were very good about teaching me how to save and teaching me to be wise with my money.
Yeah.
And I definitely really appreciated that. So, passing those lessons on to your kids. And then as you mature, you kind of figure out what you hold on to and what you let go of. What's going to help you in today's day and age and what kind of needs to be done away with for us to be more successful moving forward.
It's funny you mention all that because I wonder how many teenagers, if you were to ask them that, or even young men beyond you, just because I know you, we've hung out for a few years now together. Do you think if I were just to hand you money, that would make you successful?
I don't think so.
It's better to have the knowledge, huh?
Of how to use it.
Yeah.
Because if you hand someone money and they don't know how to use it or how to invest it, they're going to go spend it on bright and shiny things.
Oh, gotcha.
And then you can't pay off your bright and shiny things, and now you're just kind of stuck with debt.
Plus, you said it earlier. You have to learn certain things on your own, right?
Yeah.
So, for instance, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking to me about how hard it was for them when they went to college.
Hmm.
And one of the hardest things was just waking up on time.
Yeah.
Because you don't have mom or dad there to wake you up anymore. There's no cushion.
Hmm.
You can't just sleep as hard as you want to because you have an alarm to wake up to. And he was saying he wasn't very successful in college because he couldn't get up, for one. And then two, he was sheltered a lot. So when you let the dog out of the kennel, and
They want to go wild.
yeah, he went wild and kind of squandered everything.
Yeah.
So I just find it interesting
It's
that I
like
asked you how to be successful, and you didn't say money. You didn't say I need stuff. It was more like I just need to know how to do stuff.
Yeah.
And sounds like your parents raised you really well on how do you use money. You don't just spend it all. You work hard, and then you reward yourself small pieces here or there. You don't
Right.
just blow your whole check in
One of
one fell swoop, and then you don't have nothing after that.
one of the things that I most appreciate that my parents taught me, and my dad especially taught me, was how to work, because I had to work for my money. They didn't pay for me to go to college. They didn't pay for my books. They gave me a roof over my head, and they gave me food in the fridge. And beyond that, if I wanted to spend money on something, I had to go make the money myself. And I think that's important too, providing those necessities for kids. Because, like, to be out there and to be 16 and trying to find somewhere to rent for $1,200 a month, that's unreasonable. That's hard.
Yeah.
But, if you provide for them, like, the shelter, and, if they make the decision that they do want to, go do that on their own, that's their decision once they're 18. But, I think that they did provide me with the necessities that I needed, and then I had to pay for and work for the other stuff that I wanted. And I think that helped me out a lot and set me up very well.
Gotcha. What can a dad do more of?
I think a dad can do more of, when their kids are young, spending time with them, especially. I think, the ideal dad would be in his word, be studying it and applying it for his children and for his whole family as a whole. I think a dad could do more of showing people, being patient, being kind with others.
Yeah.
I think that those are some qualities that a dad could do more of.
And gentlemen, just in case you didn't know, it's really hard to do that by yourself. With God's help, it's way easier. So with me growing up, I didn't have a father figure in the home.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the hardest things was to learn how to be a dad when you didn't see what a dad looked like in your life.
Yeah.
That to me was one of the hardest things raising my kids, was learning to be a dad, starting from nothing. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, what does a dad look like? I don't even know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had to learn it, and the only way I learned it was reading God's word and applying what it said. Not just reading it, but applying what it said. Like, hey, treat others how you want you to be treated. So I don't want my kids to treat me bad, so why would I treat them bad?
Mm-hmm.
If I learn to talk to them like human beings, they'll talk to me like human beings. So again, gentlemen, the best thing you could do is look to God to learn how to be a dad, because it's hard to do it on your own. You may be stubborn like me and it'll last a while, but it won't last forever unless God is there changing you from the inside out.
Do you think being a dad has helped you to disciple others?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
How so?
So, because especially when they're younger, because there's times I wish I could have back with my boys. And instead of wishing that now, I could do that with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I could go fishing with them, teach them how to hunt, how to go and shoot a gun. Down here, we love shooting our guns, right?
Yeah.
And it's just all the times I missed the mark with my sons. It's just nice to be able to have that time back with someone else and teach them the right way. So when they have families, or they one day plan on having kids, they'll know how to treat them. because of how you treated them.
Mm-hmm.
So I take that serious and I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
If I didn't have people to disciple, people to hang out with younger than me, then I'll just be the old guy on the block.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, in a sense, I get to think like you, walk with you, talk with you, and really flex my mind in what I really believe. If you're not asking me questions, if you're not challenging what I believe, then
You get stuck in
it's
your
not
ways.
real. Yeah, and I get stuck in my ways. And the last thing I want to be is somebody who's always right and always shutting everybody out because my way is the best way. I don't ever want to be like that. What is something a dad that can devastate you?
I think the number one thing for devastating a kid would be leaving. I think there's a lot of people right now who are growing up without father figures, and that affects the way that they treat the women they're in relationship with, the way they treat their kids, and the way they view themselves. If their dad left, they don't think that they have any worth.
Yeah.
I think that that's the number one thing that a dad can do to devastate themselves. I think that's the number one thing a dad can do to devastate their kids.
I gotcha.
Beyond that, though, I think it goes back to how you talk to your kids, too, because especially when they're young, that's where your confidence comes from. And there were times that I feel like my dad really missed the mark on instilling confidence in me. And it took me, 20-something years to find confidence.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to the way your dad talks to you and the way that they, try to build you up. Especially as a son, you're always looking to your dad.
Yeah.
So if your dad is not encouraging you and not really speaking the best way to you, speaking life into you, you wonder what your worth is. And then you're confused on it, you're depressed about it, and it leads to a whole spill of issues.
Gotcha.
So I would say really being careful about the words you use around your kids, because they're going to soak it all in. And, being there for your family, I think, is the most important thing. And then just paying attention to how you speak with them.
So I want to hit on what you just said because I lived on both sides of it. As I told you, I grew up not having a dad in the home. And then before I met my wife, I had a relationship before that, and I had a daughter from that relationship. So I got to see firsthand what my dad went through on the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier we talked about emotional connections, right? Well, dads aren't emotionally connected to their kids like moms are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy for a dad to turn that off.
Right.
It's like sleeping around. It's easier for a man to do it than for a woman because they have all these emotions and they tie into that. With men, it's not so, unfortunately. So in God's word, he doesn't like divorce, right?
Right.
And it's not knocking on the divorcee. He doesn't like divorce for one because it hurts the person that's going through it. When young men and young ladies sleep around, they learn to turn that emotional connection off. And to turn it back on is something different. That's a whole nother story. So God wants us to be with one person for a lifetime, right? Mm-hmm. And if anybody breaks that vow or that relationship, what comes with that? Hurt. So in a divorce or in a breakup, that hurt reflects on the person next to you, and my natural response is to pay you back. Mm-hmm. So in a divorce, when there's kids involved, whatever parent hurt the other parent and both parents get hurt, right? Then it becomes I don't know, there's no easy way to say it. It becomes a pissing contest. So mom and dad want to see who can hurt the other one the most. And usually the mom wins that out because of their emotional connection to the kids. So I lived on the side of, hey, your dad's an evil person. He does this and that. The whole time my mom was doing the same thing that she's accused my dad of doing. And yes, he probably was doing that, but she was doing it at the same time.
Right.
So the way she got back to my dad was to separate us from him. Mm-hmm. And how you just said that devastates you as a son, to be devastated from a dad. All that to say is, ladies, especially ladies, encourage your kids to talk to their dad. unless there's abuse involved or the kid is unsafe. That's a whole nother ballgame. But don't do it to get him back. To pay back the dad is a terrible idea, because you're taking from your son. Moms can't teach sons how to be men, and vice versa. Dads can't teach daughters how to be young ladies. God has both mom and dad in a home for a reason. So when it comes to discipline, learning things, going out, learning how to work, bringing home, treating your kids right, a dad has to teach you discipline. Moms, on the other hand, they bring grace and mercy to the relationship. So if you have all this grace and mercy but no discipline, what does that get you? It's unbalanced, and it turns into people going to prison. That's why our prisons are full of young men who fathers. Didn't have fathers, because they don't know discipline. So,
but on the flip side, you have all discipline, there's no love.
Exactly. And then it goes the opposite way. So the importance of the mom and the dad, it's not one greater than the other. It's both coming together as a unit to raise the kids the right way. So yeah, the devastation part, I've been through that, and seeing the other half of it was really opened my eyes to what my dad went through and what my mom went through, and then what I had to go through, as a young man, was the same. I got to see it from both ends. So I had a lot more respect for my dad. And then I had more respect for my mom as well, because I understood hurt people. And when you understand that, it really opens your eyes and you can empathize with people. So all that to say is, people out there, y'all got to forgive your parents. They raised you the best they could with what the knowledge they were given in the times they had. I'm sure if you ask your parents, there's a list of things they wish they can have back with the knowledge they have now. And it just didn't happen. And if you don't recognize that, you'll hold on to bitterness for your whole life.
Right.
And forgiving people saves you from being a bitter old snoot.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it, but so yeah, forgive your parents. They did the best they could with what they had.
Right.
Is what I'm getting at. And yeah, being devastated without having a dad there really takes a toll on you, man. But at the same time, ladies, don't be pushing away the men because you're hurt at him. Go get therapy. Go get help. I had to do it. Tons of people. Therapy's your friend. I'm telling you, it changes everything. Teaches you not to lash out at people. All right, next question. Do you think the way your dad treated you growing up helped shape you today, whether that's good or bad?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it shaped me in good and bad ways. Like we talked about, no one's perfect. The good, he definitely taught me how to work and how to work hard. And I greatly appreciate that. I think it really helped me. He provided for our family, and I think that helped us out a ton to not have to worry about necessities.
Yeah.
He was emotionally distant, though. And so there was an aspect of learning to have emotion, learning to cope, learning your own self-worth that I had to learn as I got older, because I didn't really get that from my dad. And so I think that shaped me who I am too. Having that kind of lack of relationship, there were consequences of that, of having a lack of an emotional relationship with my dad. But there was pros to being taught how to learn how to work. And, I think with your parents, you forgive your parents, and you would want to do, when you have your kids of your own, do better than your parents did for you. And I know for my dad, he did better than his parents did for him, to me and my sister.
Gotcha.
And so, was it perfect? No. Were there still a lot of mistakes? Yes. Were there some good times? Yeah. So I think taking the good, learning what was good, and, unlearning what was bad. Because all of us have good and bad in us. And so I think that, we're shaped very much by our parents. But then whenever you get older and you have relationships with other people, they start to shape you too. Some of your friends that you hang out with, they shape who you are, how you think, and what you do.
Yeah.
Mentors that you have in church, in work, wherever, they shape you for who you become, and you're molded into that person.
Yeah. Do you think dads play an important role in children's lives?
Yes.
Yeah. So those of you who don't have a dad, I would suggest highly that you look to God for that input, for that true fathership, because our dads are flawed, but Jesus, he's not.
Mm-hmm.
He will never let you down. Um, Dads will break trust. God won't ever break your trust. Now, I'm not saying you'll always get what you want. That's not trust. That's being petty when you don't get what you want. But the trust that you'll find in God, that you're looking to your dad for, you can only find in God.
I think, too, if you look towards the church and look towards the leaders of the church, the men who lead the church, or even the women in the church who, are the older women there, it's those people really help to help you. Even if you do have a dad, I think that sometimes the relationship that you have with other people
helps you appreciate a little more of what you have,
and
or
it
what
helps
you
you
didn't
learn and
realize.
grow. Helps you learn and grow. I know, like, there men in my life who have really, stepped into that teaching role for me, and I greatly appreciate that. And it helped me to learn and grow and become more confident, and to find God, and to follow Him truly. Because you see how God has changed those men's lives. You see how you would want to be more like them.
Yeah.
And where does it start? It points back to God. It points back to Jesus and how He is and how He treated people.
Yeah.
And so then you want to be more like that. So I think looking for those role models as well in the right places. Because you could find them in the world, but it's not going to work out well. But if you find them within the church, you find people who are older and full of the Holy Spirit, they will lead you the right way.
I gotcha.
But you have to also be willing to change and let the Lord work in your heart.
Yeah, I understand.
But if you are, it's an incredible experience.
Nice.
It's what discipleship is, right?
Yes, sir. All right. Well, church fam, I hope you got a lot out of this conversation. And Gavin, thanks for sharing your time, man. I appreciate the insight. And I hope everyone out there appreciated it. And church, until next time, we'll talk to you later.